right. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Hey, thank you guys for coming on out here in person and online to the lounge where we just, as men, just come together and talk about men things. I'm so excited that all of you have decided to come out here this evening. For those, if this is your first time, my name is Eric. And we're just so honored that you're here. Really, it is a time where we're just talking, we're learning. The whole goal is to learn, to grow, to encourage, to sharpen one another so that we may be all that God has called us to be. And so the goal of this is to do this kind of once a month where we kind of talk about a certain topic, bring some important, incredible men of faith in just to spark conversations surrounding certain areas and things. Like last month, I had a friend of mine, Reverend Michael McDaniel, come down and we talked about fatherhood and all those different things. And so I'm encouraged today. I'm excited this evening for our guest here tonight, an incredible man of God who's full of wisdom, anointing, and just the fruit of a disciple of Jesus Christ. And his name is Wes Young. So let's give it up for Wes as he's here tonight. Wes, man, thank you so much for being here.
It's a pleasure, and you guys are worth it. I've just been looking forward to our time together.
Yeah, man, yeah. He got his cowboy boots on, looking all sweet and everything. Listen, as we talk, I know there's going to be questions come up. Please, if you're online, you can type it out in the chat. Here in person, hey, just raise your hand up and then we'll get a mic to you so you can ask the questions, all those different things. Today, what we're talking about is we're talking about God's perspective when it comes to the areas of finances. Talking about that word that we don't like to talk about, money. And I think before going into that, man, Wes, tell us a little bit about yourself. Just kind of, tell us your story. Tell us what you do, all those different things as it kind of sets up the foundation for what we're talking about.
Sure. So we do financial strategy. That's our business. And we work primarily with people that own businesses and real estate and then some corporate executives. And it seems like when we meet them, about half of them have actually done a lot of planning already, and they've got some good advisors that are a part of their team. And then the other half, they've been successful, but they just haven't done a lot in that particular area. The one thing we always say they all have in common, and this is probably common with every one of us in this room, is they all have far more things they're trying to get done than they have time to get to everything.
Yeah.
And in their effort to get to everything, they fail, and they miss out on some things that they know they're missing out on that are important to them. And then a lot of things that if they did know about them, it would improve their quality of life and profitability, and they'd want to get to it. And that's really our job, Eric, and where we come in is we spend a lot of time up front just asking a lot of questions about where people are from a financial standpoint.
Yeah.
And about all the stuff they care about, the future that they're moving towards and trying to create. Because once I understand that, we can have some great dialogue on all the areas of planning we specialize in that may be most useful to them and go from there. And really just our main win as an organization and is just to help people increase their profitability and quality of life and trying to get them things that'll help them on their journey.
Yeah. How did you? Because I know the story, so I would love for everyone here to hear the story. How did you get into this business? How did you get into the financial aspect of it?
Yeah, you look back, and I don't think I knew this at the time, but looking back, I look at different things that I felt like were catalysts to ultimately leading me into the work that we do today. And it was actually a moment. I was about 15 years old, and I was having an argument with my dad, which was pretty unusual for me and my dad. We had a great relationship, and we talked about everything, and there wasn't really anything that was off limits except for the subject of money. And we grew up in a house, and just if you asked about it, it was you don't ask those questions, and they would just kind of shut down on things. And I think a lot of that was just how they grew up and their kind of financial mentality, and it's what they were taught. And but I remember sitting there frustrated, and I'm 15, and I remember trying to ask my dad a question about money, and he was shutting me down. And I have a great dad. We have a great relationship. So it was just an awkward moment, and I just remember saying, Dad, I'm not even going to know what a good living is or how to do things with money because your mom never talked about it with me. And at that moment, it was everything turned from an argument atmosphere to really an atmosphere of heaviness and sadness. And my dad, he said, Wes, we don't talk about it because I don't know what to tell you. He said, your mom and I struggle. He said, we've made really good money over time, but it just seems like there's never enough. We live under financial pressure and tension. We've got credit card debt. We just struggle, and I don't know what to do about it. So I don't talk about it with you because I really don't know what to tell you. And I just thought that was such an honest moment with my dad. And I remember, it wasn't like at that moment I said, I'm going to be a financial advisor and help people not have to do that. But somewhere in there, I really believe it was God's sovereign hand that I said, I need to figure that out.
Yeah.
And you know, my dad, he always says he didn't teach me anything about money, but really he did.
He did, yeah.
You know, sometimes we would say you can be a good, bad example in some areas. And I just remember starting to just study about money, study about economics, study about just the lives of lots of successful and not so successful folks financially and in all areas of life. And ultimately started studying the life of Jesus and what he had to say about money. And you know, there were some amazing things that I started seeing as patterns that Jesus taught and talked about money to people that seem to have the most, not only financial health, but financial peace in life. And that's ultimately kind of what got us here today and what led me to what we do today, some 20 years later.
And that's incredible, you know, because, I mean, when you think about, you know, how the Bible talks about my people are destroyed because of the lack of knowledge, the lack of understanding, revelation, the lack of just having the conversation and really if I can use this word, discipleship of training, passing it down from one generation to the next, you know, of having those conversations. You know, I have an incredible dad, mom and dad. I feel like I have the best that God created, but we didn't have those conversations. And I think part of it is because of the lack of knowledge, the vulnerability of it all those different things. And so, you know, it's why is there such a around money? You know, especially when you look at when we look at Jesus and as he is the cornerstone of our salvation, he's the cornerstone in whom we build our life upon. And when you look at what he talked about the most, he talked about money.
Right. Absolutely.
Why is it that even within the church, there's this uneasy, there's this kind of taboo, there's this kind of thing, we'll talk around it, but we really don't address the concept of money? Yeah,
you know, I love talking about it, and I love talking about this particular tension that exists. And you know, because I'm a money guy and I've written some books on money and the Bible and what God says about money. Oftentimes when I get to opportunity to communicate, when I'm invited to come communicate, it's the money message, right?
Yeah.
Money conversation.
Yeah.
So and I can have a lot of fun with that. Because I always tell them, look, I give checks to here. I don't get checks from here. So I don't want your money. You know? But I always ask a question at the front, and it kind of has fun with this tension. Is I always ask, you know, we're getting started in the message. Hey, I just want to start out a quick question. In fact, I'll ask all you guys here and watching online, how many of you want to be rich? Just show of hands. Yeah, usually it's kind of just...
Look, everybody looking around like, can I raise my hand? Is it okay for me to raise my hand?
Is this okay? You know? And then some people, it's like, you know, you get a big enough crowd. Some people are like, well, I'm not even going to look at him. I'm just going to head down. And then what I always do is say, now listen, that's fine. For those of you who didn't raise your hand, next week we're going to have a message on honesty. Because we're all lying if you don't raise your hand. And you know, I think that this word, money or rich, especially in church, because people put their hands on the wallet all of a sudden, and how much you're going to ask for and that sort of thing. But I think there's a couple like legit reasons that people have tensions around this, particularly in the context of church. Is one, it's kind of like I've got a real good friend of mine. He's a principal at a school, and he said, you know, Wes, if I'm not careful, he said, I spend most of my day dealing with the bad kids and the trouble kids. He said, pretty much, I start seeing them all the good kids are bad too. That's my experience. And you know, the thing about when it comes to churches and money is that you never hear the great about because there's so many great churches doing so many great things and great stewardship, but those don't make the news.
Right.
You know, what makes the news is the one who closed down or embezzled or did some bad things. And that's such a small minority, but that's a real deal. And that's why there's checks and balances in place and stewards. But honestly, I think the other reason that may have a little more weight in this tension that we tend to carry around money is, in thinking about what God had to say about money, is that there's this idea that God wants something from you. You know, and Jesus just simply didn't teach that anywhere. He just wants so much for you, not from you. That money is money. He just didn't want you to reverse the way he talked about money, because he talked, as you said, Eric, over and over about money. And while his message was always consistent around that money does bring meaning to your life, it's just not the meaning of life. And it's a wonderful tool. Terrible master. And so, but he didn't want you not to know how to use the tool. And I think a lot of times, well-meaning communicators will talk about money as if it's a bad thing, as if it's evil. You know, it's the root of all
evil.
It can be, right? It can be a root in the path there, just like anything else in our lives. So I think just putting it in proper perspective and saying, look, God cares about you. He cares about how you steward what he's given you the opportunity to steward in this planet, because he wants so much for you and not from you.
You know, you use that word steward and stewardship. A lot of times when it comes to finances and the aspect of money and all that, it's that the tension between the stewardship versus ownership. And when it comes to that, how would you define the difference between the two?
Yeah, it's a great point, a great conversation, because if you think about this, I think about money. I observe the lives of hundreds and if not thousands of people very intimately when it comes to money, and have had thousands and thousands of conversations with people about money. And I will tell you that there's a difference between financial health and financial peace. Okay, you can have both. But there's a lot of people who have a lot of financial health, and I'll talk what I mean about that in a second, but they don't have financial peace. It's kind of like we always say financial health is like physical health. It's not a place you arrive at. It's a condition you continually pursue. Because you can have somebody that's got an extraordinarily healthy body. They eat right, they work out, but their mental health isn't necessarily there. They're still freaked out, right? And so that's a little bit the same way. Somebody can have a big old pile of money. Their situation can look very nice financially, but they are more worried about money than they were when they had very, very little. And the way we like to think about it, and if you think about three categories of financial health, okay, you can be surviving, and by the way, that's where most people are in life, and they stay there the longest period of time. Everybody starts out there in general. Surviving is, and the way we language this is these are all conditions relative to rich. And when I say rich, here's what I mean. It's not a place you arrive at. It's an activity you engage in. Being rich is the activity of creating more than you consume financially. Okay, so in that surviving, which is where most of the population stays, is they're consuming as much or more than they create. Okay, this is where the majority of the people are. And then you have stabilized, which is a even smaller category, people who are stable, and they are creating more than they consume, but they're still dependent on their human capital being at work in the marketplace to continue to create more than they consume. So in other words, if they don't go to work, they don't have enough income to take care of the outgo. And then there's a smaller category than that, and that's what we call thriving, from the condition of financial health. And this is where they've built enough economic value outside of their self, outside of their human capital, and structured it in a way where the income is greater than the outgo, whether they're trading time for money or not. Now, it doesn't mean they'll stop trading time for money. There is an element of purpose and drive and things like that. It just means they could if they wanted to. Work has become optional, if you will, is another way, which I think most people want that. To work to be optional. If you're working, you want it because you don't have to, but you like to. Now, so most of us, for most of our lives, we have to do both. We have to, and we can still like to, right? But so you think about those levels of financial health, and you can have somebody that is in the optimal point of financial health. They are thriving, but as I said earlier, they don't have financial peace. Because I really believe it goes back to what you were just talking about earlier, is that they're viewing everything from an ownership perspective instead of a stewardship perspective. Everything is mine. And so if you were to, just categorize the way they think about it, it's, well, first I spend on me, and then I save. This is the majority of the order of people's financial script in their mind by default. So I consume first on me, I spend second on me, and then if there's anything left over out of the goodness of my heart, or I see a hurricane fundraiser or something like that, I might give a little if there's any left, and there's normally not. Whereas the people that I know, regardless of where they're at from a condition of financial health, that have the most financial peace. So this can be somebody who is starting out, somebody who is in that surviving mode, that's really trying to get it out. They flip the script. They flip it to, they view it from, God owns it all. He takes full responsibility for a life devoted to him. And so what I'm going to do is trust him. I'm going to believe that he has a great plan and purpose for my life, that I know if I continue to just follow what Jesus spoke about and what he said, that I believe he's in control. And I don't know how he's going to bring it all the time. And it doesn't mean I don't need to get better at my job. And it doesn't mean, can't just give a tithe and not show up to work on time. You got to do those things. But it's give first, save second, and then live off the rest. Is people who I know that are in optimal financial health or maybe in one of those other conditions, but are optimal financial peace. That is the narrative they carry around from a stewardship perspective.
Stewardship versus ownership. How would you speak to, because we're all here and we're talking about finances, and sometimes, I guess, a lot of times like with men, because, the provider.
Right.
We're the provider, right? To provide for our family. And sometimes there's this false burden or yoke of if I'm not able to do A, B, C, then I'm not really providing as a man. So even sometimes we get ourselves in financial situations that ends up kind of blowing up in our face. And even when we talk about money, there's this shame that comes with it because of the mistakes that we made, because of, not being informed or whatever the case may be. How would you encourage and speak to that person who, we say that God's mercy is new every morning. He can turn things around and all those different things. But sometimes when it comes to these financial, it's this shame that kind of comes and tries to choke the life out of us.
There's one of my really good longtime friends, and who you probably know, Ron Brigman, who's been in full-time prison ministry for, close to 60 years almost now.
Wow.
And still going hard at it. And you call him Rapping Ron Brigman.
Rapping Ron.
He
Rapping Ron.
Plays the horn, raps, and has more scripture memorized than any person I've ever met in my entire life.
Incredible guy.
But, you're so in prison, when we would do prison ministry together, and when you talk about if we talked about money or infrastructure or things like that, they're starting in one of the worst possible places, right? From that standpoint. But one of the things in his rhymes and raps that he would always say is that you can't go back and make a new start, my friend, but you can start today and make a new end. And I think Jesus spoke deeply into this in one of the most famous parables, the parables of the talents.
Yeah.
And it really did. I think it speaks to when you find yourself in that place of it just feels like you're so far away from financial health, you don't even want to try. It's like, why even try? Because I'm so far away. The parable of the talents is a great, for me, reminder of that. I'm called to do good with what I have in my hands today. I can't go recapture mistakes I've made, and we've all made tons of mistakes. Yeah. I mean, I can tell you some stories about people that have terrible, terrible financial starts, deep in debt, multiple bankruptcies, and they just chose to say, you know what, I'm going to be faithful over my little. Because in the parable of the talents, you guys probably remember it, have heard it. If not, it's a super great parable. It's to the one servant he gave 1 talent, to another he gave 2, to another he gave 5. And then he says something that I think often gets overlooked when it's talked about is, it says, to each he gave according to his own ability.
Yeah.
And I love that
Yeah.
because it's like I have in my life right now what I have the capacity to handle with God's help. And I think about this because sometimes, Eric, I don't know if you're like me, but I want more than I've got currently right now. I'm going, I need that or that. Man, if I had that, then I could, you know. And it's kind of like I was reminded, my son, he's about to be a senior, 17 years old, and he when he was about 14 years old, a friend of ours let us use his ranch for Easter. A whole family went out there, kind of camped out, and we had one car on like a 200-acre ranch. And he had this Polaris, this little Polaris to drive around on. And my son said, "Hey, Dad, can I take it out?" I said, "Yeah, son, you can take it out." And he hadn't driven a lot, but I'm thinking, it's a Polaris, there's trees, and there's this one car way over there, which was my wife's car. And you can guess what happened. I look over, and pretty soon, boom, runs right into the car. And now I was like, "Son, it's fine. Look, we'll figure it out, and we'll learn to drive." And
Okay, so hold on, because I want to make sure that I'm hearing this correctly. So when your son hits your wife's car, your response was, "Okay, son, it's going to be all right." Blah, blah. I just wonder, was that your response?
Eventually, that was my response.
Okay. All right. I just wanted because I was about to say, if that was the case, lay hands on me and pray for me right now.
Eric, I am such a godly man.
Yes,
you completely said, no problem. No, eventually I got there.
Yes. Okay.
So eventually when we got past that, but I think about it at the time, and he was like, "Hey, Dad," like a couple days later, since it's just windy roads here, can I drive the car out? And I said, "Son, you remember what you gotta learn to drive the Polaris before I give you the keys to the car." And, and listen, I wanted, and we eventually did bless him with the car, and now he drives around. He's better. He doesn't hit trees or anything anymore. Excellent driver. But to give him that at that time in his life would not have been a blessing. It would have been a curse. Now, when he's got the ability to handle it, it becomes a blessing. And so for us, when I think about, we have a perfect Heavenly Father that knows everything about us. And so when what he has placed in our hands, we have the exact capacity to handle with his help. As you know, the rest of the parable, it goes on to say the one servant took what he had and doubled it. Five servant made 5 more. 2 servant made 2 more. And the one, he didn't do anything. He didn't lose it, which is also interesting if you think about it. Because sometimes because of our little that we have to start with, we feel like, well, God, I don't even want to do anything with that. So he hid it. He just sat on it and then gave it back to him. And he said, "You wicked and lazy servant. You knew I gathered where I hadn't gathered seed, and you should have at least taken what I gave you and put it on an account and got 0.25% interest at the bank on it. It's kind of this deal." But the point there for what we're talking about today is really just I don't say when I have this, then I will start. Because in God's economy, it doesn't work that way. It's hey, you do good with what you've got, then I'm going to make you ruler over much. I'm going to make you do good with your little, I'm going to double what you've got. I'm going to take the one who nobody's doing anything with, and I'm going to give it to the guy who has 10. I think the key is do good with what you've got with God. So not trying to work it on your own. Jesus also said, "Come to me, all you who are tired and carrying heavy loads, and I'll give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. Learn from me. And you'll find rest." And I love that the yoke is there's two spots, right? So it's like if you're tired financially, maybe you're carrying that yoke by yourself. And what did Jesus say about it? What are the things that practically I can do to yoke up with God's best for my life financially? Because he wants so much for us and doesn't want anything from us.
Yeah, that's so good. So what I'm hearing so far is when it comes to the tension around money, finances, one, having to ask myself, do I have the mindset and mentality of stewardship versus ownership? Stewardship understands that, sees it from a perspective that all that I have, the earth is the Lord's, the fullness thereof, the world and all that dwells in it, everything is the Lord's. that he's just entrusted to me to be a good steward in how I handle those resources. I'm going to be accountable to how I handle the resources that God has entrusted to me. Ownership says, is mine. Is mine. I do whatever I want to, so I'm acting in my own will. So I have to ask myself, when it comes to my perspective and my worldview, in that area when it comes to resources and money, what lens am I operating through?
Absolutely.
Stewardship, it's ownership. But even my perspective towards money, do I see it as a tool or is it my master? Okay? Those things so far.
Absolutely.
Then you just talk to us about, the parable of the talents, really starting, right where you are, that whole piece, not saying, hey, when I get this, then I'll start. Saying that. So for me, the practical aspect of that, where do I start?
Yeah, I think it can be so simple. It really can. And it's really two things. It's you got to know your location and your destination. And when I talk about location, think of it this way. Have you ever been physically lost? Like in a public place, airport, museum, mall, something like that? We don't really go to malls anymore, right?
I know, yeah. Back in the day, they used to be the spot where everybody used to go hang out.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when you're lost in a public place like that, everybody does pretty much the same thing. We go around looking for something.
Yep. Go look for that little sign that has all the stores, and we try to find that dot that says.
The little red dot that's a really precious 3 words to any lost person. You guys know what it is? You're here. That's right. Because all of us know something instinctively when it comes to being lost physically is I can't get where I want to go unless I know where I am relative to where I'm trying to go. And that's true not only when you're physically lost, but it's true when you're financially lost too. Because you've got to start by understanding where am I at from a financial perspective. And it's really two things, 2 frameworks. It's where's my money going? So you call it a budget or a spending plan or just an observation of cash flow. And what's my balance sheet look like? Good or bad, doesn't matter. Could be, let's say you could have a big pile, a medium pile, or you don't have a pile, you got a hole, right? So, but what is it? What does it look like? Because that's so critical. It all begins with awareness. If I don't know where I am, but I say, I really want to end up over there. It's like if I was to call you and you didn't know where I lived and say, hey, how do I get to the church? Just tell me how to get there.
I'll be like, where are you coming from?
Where you coming from?
Yeah.
Well, I really don't know. I just need you to just tell me where how to get there. And it's the same thing financially. Is I've got to understand my you are here financially, which is just a regular, it's a simple budget. It's saying, all right, no matter how much or little you have, understanding where is it and where's it going every month. What I often hear people say when I first bring this up that have never done it before is, well, Wes, I really don't make enough to worry about that. And or I make enough to where I don't have to worry about that, I think. But we really don't spend a lot of money. I always hear things like that. And I always or balance sheet. I say, well, do you have a balance sheet? No, we really hadn't gotten around to that. And I would just, from a stewardship perspective, if I was your financial advisor and you called me up and you'd been giving me money for a while and you said, Wes, hey, how are things going? How's my money doing? I said,
I don't know.
I really don't keep up with that. I don't know. I kind of got an idea. How long would I be your advisor? Not that long.
Not
right?
that long. No.
And so you can imagine if as stewards of God's money, when that's coming in, and we won't take the time just to see where it's going. And I'm not even telling you to I'm just saying track it, know where it goes. And there's free programs out there that'll do it. You could do it on an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Dave Ramsey's got some good stuff on that. But just simply knowing where it is, because it's that awareness.
Yeah.
It makes you, it puts guardrails around your behavior automatically. And we always joke, it's kind of like if you've ever downloaded one of those weight loss apps, you guys ever, where you put in the food you ate and stuff like that. And even if you didn't have a goal, but you were plugging that stuff in and it gets your calorie count down there, all of a sudden you make a different decision. Just the awareness of what you're doing there. It's the same thing with spending money. It's like being aware of where it's going all of a sudden makes you a different observer about what you're spending. But when you can add to that, Eric, the where you want to go, like if you were to think about, and we were all sitting in the room, hey, where do I want to be if I'm telling my story 3 years from today? If I'm having a conversation, we're sitting down and you're telling me, walk me through a day in the life of you financially, and what that's like 3 years from today. What do you want it to feel like? What are your financial goals? What's your giving goal? What is it that you've saved? Where are you spending your money? Mm-hmm. What's that like 3 years from today? And you kind of create robust financial health for you 3 years from today. And then you lean back into the reality of where you are. And from that, then you can really have some great informed next steps, because you can say, here's where I am. I want to get there. Yeah. What am I going to do about it today to get a little closer? Yeah. And really, that is God's only requirement for you, is to say, hey, God, I'm going to be intentional about this. I want to be a good steward of your money. And I'm here. I'd love to be here. What can I do right now with my little? Yeah. To be in a bit different position in the future. Yeah.
That being faithful with the small, and I'll make you rule over many, right? So talking about from a budget standpoint, because, so walk us through just the simplicity of developing a budget. Like, because I know, like you saying some words and, balance sheets and all that. Like, I don't want to assume that any of us know any of that. Just really talking through, like, how do we operate? How do we construct a budget?
Sure. So really, I always say start from the standpoint of just write out, track, and you can be as complicated or as simple as you want, exactly where all your money went every single month. And you might have to start out doing it weekly, just as you're getting in the rhythm of it, but all of us are going to spend money this week and next week and next week and next week. So you just need to track where it went and just sit there and say, all right, it went to this category, this category, this category. And what's amazing is you do that for 4 weeks in a row, and all of a sudden you're going to total it up, and you're going to say, wow, I spent that much on that, or that much on that. And listen, I don't care where you spend your money. I mean, you can spend it on whatever you want. It's not about like telling you don't do this or do this, but it's about making sure that what you're spending it on is not getting in the way of the future that matters most to you. Because the reason we trade what matters most to us ultimately for what we can have immediately is we forget about what we want ultimately. Yeah. And so the budget is simply starting with track every category, everything that I bought. Money went to this, and this. And then just decide, is that going to get me to robust financial health? Is this what good stewardship looks like for me? Or are there some little things I can change? Yeah.
So that budget helps us, really gives us a clear picture to kind of move us out of the 3 tiers where you said the surviving, being stable, to the rich part, right? That's right. The third one, the top one is the rich part, right?
Thriving.
Thriving, okay, but rich, thriving. No, I was just saying. So surviving, stable, thriving. Because all of us here, if we're being honest, we all want to be at that top point.
You bet.
Of thriving, right? But the problem, the question that we all have to ask ourselves is, are we willing to be disciplined, to be led by the Spirit in cultivating what it takes to move up the pyramid ladder, right? And first of all, it starts by just being faithful with developing that budget. Being responsible for knowing where those resources are going. And to be able to, have that honest conversation with yourself, for those who are married, with your spouse. This is where we are. This is where we want to go. How can we get to point A to point B? But first, we got to really look and be honest with ourselves where we are.
Yeah, and many times the thing that will deter people from doing that first step of just saying, where am I? What does this actually look like? It's kind of like if you're out in the country. We kind of live out in the country, and from the time our kids were little, we always said, look, if you move something or flip something over, expect something that's going to be under it that's going to bite or sting you, you know? And that's a little bit, you start flipping over the rocks of your financial life, there's stuff in there you're not going to like, right? For all of us, it just is true. So, but it's so important to understanding your reality. And then once you know that reality, but you also have that vision of where you want to go. And this is true with your spouse as well. It's not very fun sometimes to say, honey, tonight we are going to go through line by line where all our individual money goes, and it's going to be great. And we're going to have some marital adjustment sessions over it, I'm sure, and which is code for fight.
Fights, right? Yeah, exactly.
And but if you start with, hey, let's talk about the future we want to create. What do we want our life to look like 3 years from today financially, in these areas that matter most? If God blesses us to get 3 great years together, what would robust financial health look like? And then you're painting that future vision of something that you both can get excited about. Then it's okay to say, to get there, we got to start back here. And we just got to start by saying, where are we, so we know how to make those adjustments. Because, we always say embrace reality, but reject its finality. Because you can move towards that better future.
I like that. Embrace reality and reject finality. That's good. That's good. We got any questions so far, D? Not yet. No questions? Any questions from the fellas here? Everybody good? Everybody good? Okay. No questions, huh? Just listening, just taking it in. Just taking it in. Okay. So budget. Say I've passed that base. I'm operating on a budget. So I'm taking that step between I know where I am, I know where I'm going. I've cultivated, and the culture within my home is we work within the budget. What's the next step?
So then some very specific spending goals is what's next. Then you saw where your money went. Now really to amp up the budget, you're going to tell it where it's going to go. Because you're going to say, I've got this to work with, and here's our situation. So let's begin to categorize where we're planning dollar by dollar, all that money that's going to go. And for us, I mean, this is something that Jamie and I, since we were first married, since right before we were married, and we started combining finances, and we said we began to tithe. Both of us grew up. She grew up in, like we always say, a holiday Catholic. So she would go on the holidays. Yeah. And I was a holiday Baptist. So so when we started going to church together, and we started hearing about what God had to say about money, all of a sudden I said, well, we ought to do that. And it was, for me, it was one of those things that, I mean, it's not easy for everybody. For me at that time, I was like, well, God's for us, and man, he's going to help. So we began doing that. So we've always given that first 10. But I recognize that's a really tough thing if you've lived a lot of life and haven't done that. Or if you're in a financial situation that feels like, gosh, I just can't do that. What I would say, the most important part of your budget, and again, I don't get checks for this. I write them. So as I tell you this, is to have that number one thing. I'm going to say, God, I'm doing this because I'm going to put you first. I know that I don't want to be an owner. I want to be a steward. Yeah. And I know you can do a whole lot more with me giving you this 10% and I get 90 than me keeping 100% and trying to figure it out on my own. But you again, it kind of opens your hands, and it begins this truly a trust, and that's where that peace comes from, I think. So if there was a line item I could add to everybody's first objective, even if you got to start out smaller than you'd like, it's give first, give something first. Whatever that is, because it invites God to begin to participate. And over in God's word, it's just reinforced, bring the tithe into my storehouse so that there's food in my house. See if I don't open up for you the windows of heaven and pour out a blessing where there's not room enough to receive it. And now, again, that doesn't mean we can ignore everything else. Right. And just say, because it's not a magic wand. Yeah. It's not God's not a teller machine, but it is the door that begins you saying, I want to do it your way. And so lining out, what are my goals? What's my giving goal? What's my savings goal? And then ultimately, what's my spending goal? And for many people, a big part of your spending is going to be debt reduction. Because if you got yourself in debt, and most people in their life have, you're going to begin to have a debt reduction plan. And a good debt reduction plan, Dave Ramsey has one. It's called the Debt Snowball, if you've ever heard of it. And that's just where you categorize all your debts from biggest to smallest. And you pay the minimums on everything except the smallest debt and pay as much as you can towards that smallest debt until it's depleted. And then you move that over to the next, the new smallest debt. And you keep doing that and doing that. And it's amazing. I've seen so many people do it.
Wow.
You know, if you ever listen to his show, it's kind of funny because people will call her in, I'm debt free. And they, do that.
Yeah.
But some amazing stories too. They're very inspiring, but it's a way out is what it is. And it's not microwave, right? This is crock pot.
Yeah.
It really is. But I will tell you this, and people ask me this all the time. Well, Wes, would you not give and wait until you got that debt out of the way? And I always go back to, no, it's not. I never say, well, when I do, then I will.
Yeah.
Because what also happens, I believe God gets very involved in the process there. He wants so much for us.
Yeah. Tell that incredible story about your assistant, right?
Yeah. So I've got a couple really cool. I've got a lot of good giving stories. I want to tell you two because they're both unique and different. This one's one of my favorite giving stories, just because it's so powerful. So many years ago, probably now 16, 17 years ago, I had an assistant that left, and I knew they were leaving. I mean, they said, hey, gave me 2 weeks and everything. Had another person lined up to come in. They were going to start the following Monday. This was a Friday. And we were super busy time, so it was really important that I get them to start. Well, that Friday, the person that was supposed to come and start for me called and said, Wes, I'm so sorry. I can't come to work for you. Here's why. Here's what's happened. And I totally understood. I was like, yep, okay, makes sense. And a little frustrated and okay, well, I'm going to have to figure something out. So, Jamie and I had decided to take a little staycation. We stayed at a little hotel, the Renaissance Hotel right over here back then, and had a date night and stayed over. And that Saturday morning, I was just praying about it and writing in my journal and reading the Bible and just thinking. And then this didn't happen to me all the time, but it happened this time. I kind of unconsciously wrote the words in my journal, hire Brian's assistant. And I knew a guy named Brian. I didn't know his assistant, never met her or anything like that. But I couldn't imagine that God was telling me, go steal this guy's assistant. Right? That just didn't line up with my understanding. But I kind of dismissed it, to be honest with you. I wrote it, and then I started thinking about other stuff and getting a game plan, how I was going to do it. And so then Monday morning comes around. And Monday morning comes around, and as I'm in my office, I had one of my friends stop by, and he said, hey, where's your new person? I said, well, here's what happened. He said, well, hey, have you thought about hiring Brian's assistant? And I said, I actually have, turns out, as of Saturday morning, and I didn't know he had an assistant. He goes, yeah, she's getting full-time work, and so if she's looking for a new opportunity, Brian knows about it, everything's fine. I said, okay, so I talked to her, and she was a great fit. I told her, hey, here's what I'm gonna pay you, and she was ecstatic at that, and she's been with me now for, going on 17 years. And that's cool in and of itself. I really feel like that's one of those things God really, takes care of. He takes responsibility for lives devoted to him. But that's not the coolest part of the story.
Yeah.
So it's like with the old Paul Harvey, if you guys ever heard Paul Harvey, now the rest of the story. And the reason that she needed a full-time work, she was working part-time, is because she was a single mom going through a divorce. And when she was doing her economics, she realized, I got to have full-time work or I cannot support my family in our current condition. So she started looking for full-time work, and she actually had a couple offers the week before, and she was going to think about it over the weekend and make a decision on Monday. And she sat down at her kitchen table, and she wrote out, just like we do, just like we're talking about here, do good with your little. And she wrote out, here's where my money is going right now. And then she'd look at the bills, and then she looked at the two offers she had. She looked at the bills and looked at the money coming in. Looked at the bills, looked at the money, looked at the bills, looked at the money. And she realized she would have just enough money to pay all of her bills as long as she didn't tithe. As long as she didn't tithe. And honestly, she'd never tithed before, but it was really something God was working on her heart. She'd really been just leaning into it, wanting to embrace God's best for her life. And so she said, I was looking at the bills, I was looking at the money, looking at the bills, looking at the money. She said, and then I just looked up. And then I did something different one time that I'd done 1,000 times a different way. I wrote the tithe check. And I said, I trust you. And then that was Saturday morning, and what she didn't realize is that same morning, across town, a guy she'd never met, who never met her, wrote the words, "Hire Brian's assistant." Wow. And my offer would be many times more than she needed to both pay her tithe and pay all the bills that she had. Now she makes many times what she made then. And but I often look back. I do. I look back and I think, what hung in the balance of that one decision to do something different one time that she'd done 1,000 other times a different way. And so if you're on the fence with that, or you just have struggled with it, Pat, I would really say this is one of those areas God invites us to test him, and just test him in this one area, because I've just seen too many success stories. I'll also tell you another one's a bit different. This was when we were raising money, or the Shoreline. We were at Shoreline. We were raising money for the Children's Center over there, and Jamie and I really felt like, hey, we are going to give a large gift over and above the tithe, and so we prayed about it. We really felt like this is what we were supposed to do, and it was substantially above what we were making. And this is back when I was early days of my business, so the income's all over the place. You know, some months are good, some are bad, some are negative, and I remember saying, no, but I really felt like God's in this, and then we started writing those checks every single month. And then after about 6 months, we were as out of money you could be. I mean, we were all the way down. So it's like, so I was saying, this is a magic wand, right? It wasn't, hey, because Jamie she was stay-at-home mom, because we just had our son Gage, and so she had a pretty good job before, and her $60,000 she was making every year, all of a sudden that wasn't there, and we made no adjustments to our budget, because I just figured, we'll figure it out. We'll just make the money and it'll be fine. God's for us. Who could be against us? It is God, my God. And so, I mean, we were just all over it. But that wasn't stewardship. Stewardship, a steward says, God, I believe you're in this. I believe we're going to do it. And let me make all the changes I know to make and do this. And so we kind of reassessed, and we started, we made the little changes, and we kept doing what we said we were going to do. And then so that was about 6 months into this deal, and I mean, we had a line of credit that we were deep into at that point, and then after about 3 months of the changes that we'd made, so now we're about 9 months into this, we're hired to do one of the largest projects that I at that point had been hired ever to do in my career, and by the end of that project, which is about a month long, we would have more than enough to make up all the ground we lost and get back to a place ahead of where we had started from. But I tell you those stories just because, God takes full responsibility for a life devoted to him, and he wants so much for us that he's like, Wes, I want this for you, but I need you to be capable of handling what I'm going to give you, and to do that, you got to learn this. I got to teach you this.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. D.
Yes, sir. We got a question. Question is, how do you get on the same financial planning page with your family? Not that we disagree, but just to move forward together.
My house will do what I say to go. No,
Things you don't say.
You guys are going to play this out. My wife's not going to see it. No. It's a great question, and I think honestly, it starts from a place of really getting together. One great activity, this is not just for your financial life, but I think in all the areas of life we care about, our relationships, our health, our careers that we have, professional life, financial life, spiritual life. One of the things that is a good exercise is every 3 months or so, you just getting together and just spend time writing out 3 years from today, if we're telling our story, what do we want that story to be financially? What do we want it to be relationally? What's our relationship like with our kids? What's it like with each other? What do we want it to be like in the career that you're pursuing right now? What do you want life to look like in your physical health? All those areas. And what do you want it to, it all stems from the spiritual. How's a day in the life of you, a year in the life of you look? And when you do that financially and in these other areas, that's fun. It's actually that deal where you can dream a little bit. And 3 years is good because it's far enough out there to where it's not so stuck to today. And so you do that, and then you say, all right, so if that's where we want to be 3 years from today, then what's a good, and you agree on it, right? You say, both of you, like, I'll write one, Jamie will write one, then we'll talk about it, and we'll say, yeah, let's meld those together, get on the same page. And then we back that down and say, what's a good 90-day milestone that we could hit that would put us a little closer? So, if I want to lose, 5 pounds or whatever, it be 5 pounds lighter, well, maybe over the next 90 days, I could at least lose 2 or something like that. That might be it. Financially, same way. If I'm giving 10%, I want to be able to have X amount of money saved. Well, where am I at now? What would be a good milestone to hit 90 days from now that I'm a little far away from? Then it's where the hard work begins, because that's where you lift over that rock and you say, all right, but here's where we are. So what are we going to do about it? And so getting on the same page, I think it always starts with the fun stuff where you're saying, hey, here's where I want to go, because that gives you the fuel. It gives you the fuel to do the hard work today. Nobody doing a budget isn't fun. I mean, I'm in the financial business. It's still not fun. It's just, but it's got to be done.
How do you kind of pick it up? How did you start having the conversations with your children about finances?
Yeah, when they were little, one of the things that we started doing with them and still do today is we just had jars. We had these jars that one was God, one was you, savings, and one was your spend. And so any money that they ever got from the very early days, it was more just kind of hardwiring a habit to begin with, because you don't even think about it when you're a kid. You get $1 and 10 cents goes in this one, that's no problem. Yeah. And then I put another 10 or 20 cents in my savings, and then I can buy whatever I want with this money. And then I think it's easy to start from the beginning. It's harder the later you get, like when you're older and you try and do it, because you got habits, right, that you've ingrained in yourself. It's just not part of the system. So starting there, and then you just beginning to be the example. So let's say your kids are older and you haven't done that, or let's say that you're older, you haven't personally done it, and so probably, like, my dad just didn't teach me stuff about it. Yeah. But then you just be real honest with them. You say, you know what? If we want God's best for our life, here's what we're doing to put ourselves there. We're going to have a vision of the future. What's your vision for the future based on what you know? What would you like financially for your life to look like, 3 years from today? And it'll be different because they're in different seasons of life. I mean, basically, kids are, they are surviving. Because they consume far more than they create. Yeah. That's it every year. Yeah. And but eventually we want to get them to that place. And when I talk to Gage and Abby, our kids, about this, I always say, look, one of the things me and your mom want to do is we want you to still want to come home when you no longer have to, but we want you to no longer have to at some point too. We want you to be in a position where early days you required us for everything. For just to stay alive, when they're little babies, and then eventually they become a little autonomous. They can go to the bathroom and feed themselves, and then they don't need you quite as much until one day they should be in a position where they're responsible for somebody else, and that's really just setting that as a, hey, don't you want to be here in the future? So it's very much like getting your family on the same page and saying, or your significant other, we want to be here, right? So here's where we are. What are we going to do about it? Similar conversation with the kids. You want to be here, right? Or where do you want to be? Well, you're here. What are you going to do about it? Yeah. What's our plan going to be?
That's good. That's good. Simeon.
Hey, how you doing? I'm Simeon Hood, and I had a question for you. I was thinking about the parable of the talents. You had one guy sat on the money, one. The second guy had 2 talents. He went to work, and the third guy had 5 talents, and he invested. We kind of know what sitting on it looks like, and we know what going to work looks like. What are some ways that you can understand what practical investments would look like, and how that would get you from a stable living to a thriving living?
Yeah, it's a great question, Simeon. Yeah. So think about it like this. Is that if you think about like the pie chart of your financial life, there's really 3 types of assets that all assets are going to fit into one of these 3 categories. You've got business assets, you've got personal assets, and you've got liquid assets. And I'll speak to you what I mean by that. So personal assets, they're going to be things that they fit on your balance sheet, but they don't necessarily create money for you most of the time. Generally, they require money from you. So, and they're things you need. So there's nothing wrong, like a house, you know. Except for this last year with Austin, Texas.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
But in general, you know, even if you have your house paid for, you're still paying property tax and upkeep, and usually it's in a state of depreciation if you're not doing those things. So boats, cars, RVs, nothing wrong with any of it, but they're personal assets. And then you've got business assets. Now, business assets, they're going to be things. Everybody has a business asset, even if you don't own a business. You are a business, okay? You're in the business of exchanging your human capital in the marketplace for some money, it could be a salary, it could be bonus, it could be a combination of those things. And then you've got other business assets that could be real estate that you rent. It could be a business like mine that you own that have other people's human capital engaged in it that create revenue, whether you're in it or not every day. And I'll come back to that. And then you have liquid assets. And liquid assets are things that are with a phone call or a mouse click can be converted instantly to a US dollar. So this is going to be like stocks, bonds, stock and bond mutual funds, could be cash on the account, things that are inside your 401ks or IRAs out there. Here's the way to think about this. So in life, we all start out, number one objective is we have to create a healthy income. Okay, that's the beginning of financial health. And a healthy income is one where you're creating more of it than is being consumed. And that's where it comes to that budget, right? That's where we got it. Or am I doing that one thing? And we've got some method that we start out doing that. And so usually, early in life, we're just not as great as hopefully we will be at whatever that thing is we're doing to create income 10 years from today. Because hopefully we're developing and growing our human capital. So one of the best investments you can make early on is developing your human capital to a marketplace to where you're adding more and more value and creating a bigger and bigger income. Now, still take care of the outgo. So again, number one is you create a healthy income. Usually in life, we're starting out doing that with our human capital. Then several things happen to that money. Okay, you create it, and then one thing happens is the IRS takes some of it, right? They take their piece of it. And so in planning, one of the things we spend a lot of time on is how do we repurpose as much money as we legally can from the IRS back to your own retained earnings. And there's lots of things you can do there. Then you spend some, and so that's where your budget, what is my spend? And then you save some. And so the savings, this is where you begin to build economic value outside of yourself. And this is where that wealth building really comes in. So you can create an income, you make it healthy because you're consuming less of it than's being created, and then you're gonna put it places. And so by putting it places, usually the simplest ways to do it is you put it over into the liquid. Some people, that's the way they build all of their wealth, is they don't necessarily create other businesses. Some do, some don't. Most people, the way they build economic value outside of themselves is in the form of liquid assets. And the goal is you want to make work optional, right? And I think everybody in the room, if you want to work because you want to, not because you have to, right? So you may still work, you may love your job, but you want to be in a position where you have options. And so that savings dollar that goes over there, then you put it places, and you can put it, I can go deeper into this if you'd like, but it's generally going to be in the early days when you're saving, because there's certain access levels you'll have to invest. It's going to be stock and bond mutual funds. You know, going online, you can open up really inexpensive accounts, trading accounts, and buy the S&P 500 index in Vanguard. It's cheap and it's easy, and then you can get more sophisticated than that. But starting somewhere is the most important thing. Yeah, like I say, the biggest mistake you'll ever make is over-saving. That's a good mistake to make, right? So, you build that economic value with the hopes that you continue to do that and you get better at it, and then you start getting to a certain place where you want somebody else to run it for you. That's all they do. Then they can, you're adding layers to that. So you have other people's human capital helping you grow that at some point. That can one day provide that healthy income. So just as a quick example, let's say a healthy income for you is $50,000, because the math's easy for me on $50,000. Well, and I'm taking money and I'm saving it, and my goal is to build that to where, at a minimum, let's say I had $1 million, earning 5%, it would pay me $50,000, and it would do that in perpetuity, forever, right? Now, That sounds like a lot, but if you start plugging this into like a growth calculator and say, all right, what do I have what can I save today? And you say, here's what I have, and what am I saving today? It'll tell you about how long it'll take you to get to that mark. Yeah. Business assets are the other way you do it. And again, I always say people tend to jump into those really prior to necessarily always having the knowledge to do it. So coming along somebody that's doing it well already and something that interests you is always a wise thing to do. You know, there's people here in your church that are phenomenal business owners that you can, you know, just ask them to breakfast and see if you can learn something from them and let them talk to you about the way they've done things. And, you know, the best, I love to learn from other people's mistakes, not my own. So it hurts a whole lot less that way. So.
Yep, absolutely. And I know we're going to, because we're going to keep talking about this finance, and because there's so much that's under this umbrella. You know, like even I think for some, like even for us today, the big part is like looking at one, because once we come to the end, we're not at the end yet, but like I want you to pray off, because I think a lot of us men struggle with the shame that comes with finances, because mistakes that we've made, or even because we didn't really know, all those different things. And I just want to pray I want us at the end, we're going to pray and we're going to break that off of you so that you can really extend your faith, you know, to God, to really blaze this new trail, you know, and blaze a trail that the generations will reap from your obedience, your trust in the faithfulness of God. And that, and establishing the budget. Can you real quick just say, because I want to make sure that people understand. When you say balance sheet, what is that?
A balance sheet is simply a list of all of the things you have, all your assets. So your house, your debt against your house, all your liabilities too, your car, your debt against your car, cash in the bank, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, real estate, any of that. And so you just add it all up, subtract the debt, and that gives you kind of a picture of, here's my starting point. Here's where I'm coming from.
Got it. D?
Got another question. It says, this is going back to where you talked about the 90-day, the short-term goal. It says, how do you stay on target within the 90 days if the conversation with your spouse is stressful and they emphasized every time?
Yeah. So you pray a lot. That truly is one really good way of keeping it healthy. Is, you know, praying with your spouse is something that's really good.
Yep.
And keeping the vision out in front is the best way I know to deal with the difficult stuff.
Yeah.
You know, because there's going to be days that are hard. And there's going to be times and you just want to give up. You know, you want to throw up your hands on it. And that's human. That's all of us are there. Some people are stronger in some areas than others. So having the vision in front and then every day, I believe looking at that and praying over that and saying, God, we want to get here. We know that you have a great plan and purpose for our life. And we need your strength to keep each other strong in helping make good decisions. And then when you throw some interceptions and you screw up, you say, that's in the past. We're going to start over. And we're going to move forward from this point. Is the best way I know to do it. I don't know anybody that doesn't have marital adjustment sessions, like I like to say. But
marital adjustment sessions. Yes.
It sounds so much prettier than a fight.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, but if you've got a good rhythm of saying, here's why we're doing this, the what becomes a whole lot easier.
And just to piggyback up, there's been times that in my marriage that I know, okay, we're about to have a financial conversation. And I know that there's a possibility, there's potential of, what do you call it?
Marital adjustment session?
Yes. That really we would pray and we would invite God in. And it's amazing how the atmosphere would shift. Because we've invited God to the center of this marriage and what we're getting ready to talk about. And I think a lot of times we go into the conversation, we go into it uncovered. And it's kind of like we talked about Sunday. We don't put Jesus on. We're just going in talking, and really I'm already going in with my gloves up, my fist up, because I know what she gonna say, and when she say this, I'm gonna do this, and when she bring this out, I'm gonna bring this out about, all those, we already have those different conversations, but it's so incredible, and I wish that it really would be the majority and the priority before we have any conversation is really inviting Jesus to the table. Because it makes a difference.
I don't know any story that's ever started out. When things really started going downhill is where we started praying together on this, and inviting Jesus into it. Things went totally sideways after that.
Yeah. Lanny.
I got a question, a couple of questions. One's a spiritual question, and then one is, I guess, a spiritual question also. I struggle with enjoying my money. Like, going on vacation and this is probably more towards you, Eric. How does God feel about me going to a nice hotel, having a nice meal? I struggle with that aspect of like enjoying my money. So I'm like in turmoil with it sometimes when we go on vacation. Like, do we really need to get that golf cart? Do we really need to rent this? Do we really need to do that? The other thing is, and this is we're talking about saving, and I guess the question is, what's the end result? Is the end result for me to have enough money to give to my kids and say, okay, all this work that I've done, you guys go take it and go do what you want to with it? Because the writer of Ecclesiastes talks about that. He's like, I've done all this, and it's like I get to the end, and then what? Yeah. And I think for me, it's just like when my mom passed away. I mean, we had to take care of the funeral because my mom didn't have anything, and I feel like as a guy that grew up and didn't have a lot, then just what is the end result? Like we're talking about thriving, get to the point where we're thriving, and it's like thriving, like we're here, and then what?
Yeah. Can I jump on that first?
You sure can.
Okay.
You sure can. Because I think, because I'm going to come at it from a cultural standpoint.
Yeah. So I love Ecclesiastes because there's so much richness in it. But the one part in Ecclesiastes where he speaks to better one hand with tranquility than two hands in chasing after the wind with toil. And here's the thing, I think God built in us, and this is so clear, he built in us this gap, I call it. The gap between where we are and where we want to be, the desire to want to make whatever situation we're in better. And that's a really good thing. He built us for better, to make today better than yesterday, tomorrow better than it is today. Now, we can take that to really unhealthy extremes. Yeah. And better can become, instead of just wanting to make things better, I can want to make things better than him, or better than her, or more than is not necessarily better than. And so oftentimes, what we do is we have two hands in the future where we're trying to get over there, and that in itself is not a bad thing to want to get over there, to have the desire to. Your gap's never going to be fully and finally satisfied, nor is mine, because it's not designed to be. God said, I want you to make things better. I want you to make today better than yesterday, tomorrow better than yesterday, with your family, with your finances, with your health. I want you to be out there stewarding to make things better. That's what a steward does. He makes things better than what they've started with. And so that very desire, that kind of thing that drives us for progress, if left unchecked, what we'll find is where we want better, is we want better so much that it's where all of our attention goes. We have both hands in the future, and we don't take time to enjoy where we're at on the way to where we're going.
Yeah. No.
And so this ability for us to take time to stop and say, God, I just want to take a minute to thank you for what it is you've given me right now and the ability to enjoy. You give me these things richly to enjoy. And now I'm not doing that at the sacrifice of stewardship. Yep. Because you've outlined for me, I'm still giving, I'm saving. I'm not putting myself in a situation where I have to be taken care of by other people because I am choosing not to be responsible. I mean, all of us need people, and certain life events will cause that in and of itself. But as much depends on me to say, the point is I want to put myself in a position where where I've got a healthy income, where work is optional, because that's what a good steward does. And part of that is certainly in the whole process inviting God, doing it with God, not just for God. And that dance between remembering I'm going to have one hand and not two hands in the future. I'm going to one hand with tranquility, not two hands in the future where there's toil and chasing after the wind, because you're never going to catch it anyway. When you get there, there's always an over there. There's always, you get better and there's a better than that. And that can be really frustrating if our goal is to get to the other side of our gap. But if our goal is to navigate the gap and to say, when I get there, God's going to have another over there for me. Now, my over there may change, and it may be to, say, hey, I'm going to, this phase of life, spend more time with the grandkids at some point, or something like that. But just allowing yourself to enjoy that gift that God has given you, to be able to say, God, you have given me here, and I'm going to be thankful for what I've got right now, and I'm not going to stop reaching into the future to want to take it up a notch. How can I make it better, Lord? Help me see that vision for the future. There's a really good song, and it's an old Trace Atkins song, and it's called You're Gonna Miss This. In fact, we were talking about that we're gonna miss this when we're talking about all the games and stuff we have to run through with their kids. But it's a song that basically, I'm not going to sing it for you.
I'm about to say, you're going to sing it? You're going to sing it?
Like
you going to sing?
No, I can do one thing, and that's it. And singing's not one. But the song is about like a girl that grows into a woman, and she goes through these different seasons of life. One, she's a kid, and she can't wait to get out of school and not have her parents being over. Then she's out of her parents' house, and she's living in an apartment, and she just can't wait to get into a house. And then when she's in the house, she's got kids that are screaming, and there's a guy there fixing the water heater, and so it's like all this chaos. But the theme throughout the song, and what it continues to say, is you're going to miss this. You're going to want this back. You're going to miss these days. Wish they hadn't gone by so fast. These are some good times. Take a good look around. You may not know it now, but you're going to miss this. And every time I find myself super out of whack and anxious, and that same deal, I deal with it too, is same as you. I find that I'm not taking enough time to go, man, thank you. Thank you for this. Let me enjoy this moment. And I'm going to reach forward. And I'm not going to stop that. I can be humble and hungry, right, in the same time. But I don't want to miss. I know I'm going to miss this one day. So let me take this snapshot. And even those, whoever, we got a lot of different stages of life in here and watching online. Wherever stage you're at, there are good things. Yeah. And part of God's invitation to us is to be grateful for where we are on our way to where we're going.
That's good. He didn't say it's good. That's good. I do think so this is my personal. So I'm gonna jump out and I'm gonna jump. I do think from a personal aspect, because I've had to wrestle with that as well. Like enjoying the blessing of God, like enjoying it, keeping things balanced, right? But also for those who have been churched, a lot of what we've come up through can kind of give this picture of, because we sing, I'm coming up on the rough side of the mountain. And there's a part of it because of the history and the struggle that, that we as African Americans has had to go throughout. But the balance of it, we talk about the struggle, but we don't also talk about the overcoming, the other aspect of it. So that when we get to a position in place, it gets kind of weird to where, man, does God really want to bless me? Like, can I be blessed when I look like Abraham when he was, people who followed him, you have people on both sides of the spectrum. People, they were blessed. Like they were overflowing, but they were balanced because their lives was centered on the Lord. And so I'm really having to ask the Holy Spirit to really renew my mind with the balance of it all. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like identifying with the culture, especially of the African American Baptist Church, and the importance of, identifying the struggle and the gospel in the midst of the struggle and all those different things, but then also understanding because of Christ and because of what our forefathers have done, that has given us the opportunity to be in a different position and place where we can enjoy the fruit of our labor. You know, is that I hope that's understanding. Cool, right here.
Well, first, I just want to start off by saying I appreciate what you are saying about budgeting, saving, tithing. It's extremely important. But I just want to double down on the question that both of my brothers just had. Do y'all have any tactical strategies to really understand? For example, let me backtrack actually. In my community, I feel like there's a gap between education and accessibility to these strategies in order to be financially independent and really move from that stable stage to that thriving tier. What I'm asking is, do you all have any tactical strategies that could really help prepare people who are maybe just matriculating into the stable stage on how to be able to decipher when it's a good time to be comfortable and go ahead and splurge a little bit on vacation versus when it's actually bleeding into your success or when you can't afford it? How do you guys have any strategies to really break down affordability and you talked about a lot of things like 401ks and investing $1 million into the S&P 500. A lot of that stuff is very abstract and out of touch from our community. So even just saving $1,000 a month, $10,000, $12,000 a year is out of reach. So how do you really get tactical about creating strategies in order to create that wealth to be able to get to that level where those things are actually realistic?
Sure. So it's a great question. You always start with where you're at. And so that starts, the first money I saved, I never told you the middle of my story. Before I was in this business, I was an electrical apprentice, and then I became an electrician. And then I continued to learn how to run companies and moving my way up by reading a bunch of good books. I never went to college, but I do have an education, and I got that education through, I call it Automobile University, where I would always had a book on economics or a CD or a lot. There's this litany, and I can give you guys a great reading list of really, really powerful books. I personally like them on audio because I can do a lot of other stuff while I'm listening to them. But you develop your human capital, and then I remember the first money I ever invested was $25 literally a month because when I was like, hey, I got to save money. And it went, that my boss happened to have a thing where it went automatically. They didn't have a 401k. It was just, it automatically drafted out of my check before I saw any of it. And so an automatic is a really good thing because it's like I said earlier, the worst mistake I'd have made is that I oversaved. And it was an account I couldn't get to. It was like I had to go to the bank to get it. So tactically, when you've never done it before, creating guardrails and disciplines that are going to make it as easy as possible and not worrying about, $1 million or all the things. It's more, hey, what one thing can I do? What can I save today? Can it be $10, $5, $1, what I was spending at Starbucks? What can it be? Anything is better than nothing. It's the discipline that you're starting. And then continuing to really begin to improve your own human capital by investing in yourself in the education through, and it didn't cost a lot of money to do that. Books, you can get a lot of great podcasts and things like that for free and continue to download them, but it's generally slow. But then what you'll notice is that if you have a plan in place where you say, all right, my goal, I'm going to start with $25, and then next week or next year, my goal is to be able to save $50. And then you get there and you start doing it, and then lo and behold, usually what happens is you don't miss it. And then you just automatically continue to increase what you're saving. Before you know it, you're saving a lot more, and your life is different too, because the opportunities that'll come your way if you continue to invest in your own human capital and your ability to help people and your ability to be valuable. Most people stop learning the day they leave school. And I think that's why you see the big difference, the big gap between people 10 years apart that have left their last educational experience, whatever that might be. The number one thing I say is never stop that investment in yourself. If you know where you want to be, if you want to earn more, you're like, I want that job because I know that one earns more. I want to do this thing. What are the things I need to learn? A great question that I ask myself all the time is, am I becoming the kind of advisor the clients that I'm looking for are looking for? And that always leaves it open to me, what do I need to go learn? So constant learning, constant focus. That's the best tactical way I would tell you to approach it.
Yeah. And for me, I think, I would say just being a disciple. A disciple is a person that's always learning. So even in this, what we're doing even here this evening is to really come together so that we can learn and we can grow, right? And so that even out of this, that we can have something that we can extend our faith, because we all are in different areas and we all are on this journey, because like you were saying earlier, I mean, we all want to get to that thriving stage, right? And so it's like, okay, what out of this is the Holy Spirit kind of really touching on that we can really extend our faith to see that discipline happens in our life by the grace of God. But don't stop there. As we're learning and as we're receiving, you know, Paul says this to Timothy, and I think it's 2 Timothy 2:2. Teach these things that I've taught you to faithful men who will teach others. So it's like even the things that we're learning and that we're receiving, we just don't keep it to ourselves. Teach our family, teach our children, teach our community, places where God has planted you. Like that's how things will continue. The curses being broken, the mindsets and all those things are changed. It's discipleship. It's not just, you know, from a spiritual aspect, but it's every aspect of our lives. Learning, growing, but also teaching others.
And I would add to that when you're clear as you can be about really what you'd like life to look like 3 years from today, it's amazing what you notice that you didn't notice before. And, you know, it's you just see things that you wouldn't have picked up on. There's a funny little exercise that I've seen done where they give you this card and it looks like a bunch of ink blots all over it, and it says, "Do you know what this is?" And they usually they give you like, I don't know, it's 10 minutes to try and figure it out. Nobody ends up figuring it out. It's like, no, I can't see what this is. And then they show you another version of it. They turn the card sideways and they outline what it is, and it's the face of this cow that's in there. And then they take away the outline, and you just can't unsee it. I mean, it's like once you see it, you can't unsee it. When you have a clear vision of what, and again, your vision's going to be wrong. Okay, that's perfectly fine because it'll evolve and grow. I mean, if you wanted the same things 10 years from today that you wanted 10 years ago, you know, something's wrong. So, but when you do see it and you go, I want that, and then you back in again. Here's where I am. Here's the thing I'm going to do about it today, even if it's just one thing. What'll happen is every day that you're reading and praying over that vision and asking God, help guide me, God, help me to see as you see, and you're going to notice things and that you just would have missed before. You'll walk right by opportunities before, but because you know what you want, what you're looking for, you see the thing that's going to be helpful in you getting there. So I think the vision side of things is such a powerful exercise.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good, man. Wes, if they have questions, if they want to even, you know, follow you or even know kind of how they can continue to grow and learn more information, or even just reach out to you, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so it's real easy. You can feel free to reach out to me on my cell phone. It's 512.
He's so godly.
698.
Boy, you got the Holy Ghost.
8974. Yeah.
Wow. Did you say it one more time?
512-698-8974. And you can also, our website is wesleyyoung.com, wesleyyoung.com. And so you can email me through that and as well. But no, happy to help in any way that I can.
Man, thank you so much for coming out. And like I said, I would love to close this out by just you praying for us. You know, I know that there's probably some guys maybe even here or watching online that, you know, out of this, you know, just the tension and the struggle and the fear of really addressing where they are, you're right, looking at that, but even believing God, okay, God, what is the vision, you know, and just really writing that down and, you know, the steps of a budget, you know, looking at, do I have an ownership mindset compared to a stewardship mindset? I mean, there was so much good stuff that we talked about here today that even we can walk out of here and to kind of apply, but it all comes to the faith, you know, us extending our faith. So I would love for you to pray, just even pray off the shame, but even pray that we would really receive the grace of God to operate in this faith from the Lord to be good stewards of the resources.
Love to.
Okay?
Father, we love you. Your word says, call to me and I'll answer you, and I'll show you great and mighty things you don't know. I will guide you in the way you should go. And Father, as we are just in your presence here tonight, Lord, I pray for each and every one of these men that they would see just for a moment themselves the way you see them, Father, that you know the plans you have for them, to give them a great future and a hope, Lord, that you, Lord, will guide their every step. You want to yoke up with them, Father, and take the burden and the shame that they feel for the history they may have done, things they may have done to themselves, things that were done to them, Father, that there's nothing in the world that's too hard for you to overcome, that you will take them to a place they've never been before, that as they go through their vision, they would invite you in to help push that vision to a place that you see that's far above anything they're capable of. Father, you said, let there be light. There was light. You split the Red Sea. Nothing's too hard for you. Their economic situation is a small thing. And so, Father, we ask as just in belief, brothers here together, that you would just move in each and every one of their hearts to let them know how for them you are, Lord, and that they would leave here knowing that they indeed have the opportunity to walk with you in this journey of life towards the future that you have for them, that is so good and so rich and so overflowing, Father. And as they look to do things they've never done before, a different way, they've done 1,000 times one way, Father, that they would just take heart in you and do it out of faith, knowing that they serve a good God, that is personal, that has a great plan and purpose for their lives, Lord. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. So listen, man, thank you guys for coming out west. Thank you again. Now listen, this man gave you his cell number. If you guys don't take him and glean from the wisdom and the counsel and all that, that's your fault. Because this man just gave you his information and told you, hey, man, any way that I can help and be a blessing to you, he's all for it. And so, man, that's what we're here for us to really grow and be the men that God has called us to be. We cannot do it by ourselves. We need each other. Community is important. We will not have a lounge event next month, but we will kick things back up in August. And again, the whole goal of Lounge is for us men to come together and out of this flow into our life groups. So, you know, where we're encouraging one another, we're developing relationally to the point where where we can establish the trust for the walls to come down so we can really be vulnerable with one another, lift each other up, challenge each other, encourage each other so that we can be all that God has called us to be. All right? So listen, we'll see you on Sunday. Man, God bless you. Man, get that budget, work on that balance sheet, the saving, all that. You're not an owner, you're a steward. God wants to bless you, all that good stuff. Man, y'all be out. We'll see you on Sunday. God bless you. Peace.